Well, hello everyone. It's Martin Lush here from NSF Health Sciences. Welcome to the October edition of our free webinar program entitled Struggling, Here is Your Survival Toolkit. To just re-emphasize, this is one of many of our 2016 webinar programs. If this is the first one that you've attended, you can actually go onto our website and download all of the previous ones. They're there for your review at a time of your convenience. We will also be issuing our 2017 free webinar program soon. That will be coming out in our next journal. We actually put out a survey asking for your input, your advice. These webinars are for you, they're not for us. These webinars are intended to provide you with information that is valuable, information that helps you, information that makes your life a whole lot easier. And a lot of you did respond. And for those of you that did, a big thank you. And we will be giving you preferential registration just to thank you for your, for taking the time to contribute to the program. So if you did send us a response, we will be contacting you before we send out the formal invitations, just so that you have the opportunity of booking first, because these webinars do tend to be very heavily oversubscribed. So a big thank you for those of you who did offer some suggestions, and there's some really good suggestions as well. For those of you new to these webinars program, they're short and sharp, 30 minutes long. They're recorded, and we really sort of encourage you to share. A lot of you say, Martin, we use these for our lunch and learns. We use them as part of our training program, which is great, which is really what they're intended to do. They're intended to satisfy the needs of a broad audience and make as big a difference as possible. Any questions you ask, ladies and gentlemen, I always do get back to you. I can't answer the questions immediately during the session, but I always do get back to you. So please feedback, because that's the only way that we improve. If you have any recommendations for improvement, please let me know. And as many of you I know already do, please follow me on LinkedIn for free resources and hopefully posts and information that really do add value. If you don't know me, I'm Martin Lush. I'm president of the NSF Health Sciences Pharma Biotech division. And like every one of you, because frankly you wouldn't have dialed into this unless you are challenged in the same way that I am, in the same way as my peers, in the same way of many people I meet in industry. I'm president of a global organization, and NSF has a really strong sense of purpose. We're a not-for-profit organization focused on improving the health of people around the world. So that's what gets us out of bed in the morning. It's what encourages us to really go, the last mile in helping our clients. But, I'm also a husband, I'm also a father, and with 35 years experience in the pharmaceutical industry, that experience has provided me, and, and the same as many of you, it's provided me with an acute awareness of the challenges that we're all facing. The world is moving at warp speed. The experience that the challenges I faced in my 35 years, I think will be insignificant relative to the challenges that we will all face in the next 5 years. And the motivation for this webinar came from a client visit, I guess it was 18 months ago, when I sat in an office with a group of very committed, very stressed, very anxious, very exhausted clients. And it became clear to me that these people really weren't enjoying what they were doing, clearly very stressed, clearly very fatigued, and wanting some guidance and answers and mentorship as to a different and better way. This client was no different to any other. Firstly, they're our friends. Most of our clients we regard as friends, but under considerable pressure from new regulations, new science, new technology, lots more distractions, massive uncertainty. For those of us in the UK, we have the joys of Brexit to look forward to. That for us is a massive uncertainty. Certainly many of our clients complain of increasing complexity. I was at a conference recently listening to an incredible presentation on gene therapy, personalized medicines. They're coming along. I was listening to another presentation on the implementation of online single-cell, 100% unit, non-destructive sterility testing that is only years away from being implemented. Put on top of that, the political and social uncertainty that we are all well aware of, and you get that real sense of a world changing, not just changing, but changing at warp speed. My experience has also told me that despite all of those changes and all of those challenges, everybody is really looking for some kind of balance, a utopia where you can balance what you do at work and you can balance what you do outside work. And when I was sat in this room with these friends, these clients, it became clear to me that actually they didn't know how to achieve that balance or, in fact, get anywhere close to achieving that balance. And the alternative is not pleasant. The alternative is burnout. The alternative is poor health. The alternative is, a family life that you would rather be better. And as a result of that experience, I sort of came back and I thought, what? I think let's do something about this. But I'm not going to sit here and just put across my views and my opinions. So I actually went out to a lot of friends and colleagues who have been in the industry for 35, 40 years. They're getting close to their retirement. I asked about 30 of them, okay, when you reflect back, what would you do differently? When you reflect back, what would you tell a new starter coming into the pharmaceutical industry? So I really went to people who had been there, done it, and got the T-shirt. In other words, there's lots of management books, there's lots of books on lifestyle, all of which are valuable reading, but you can't get any better advice than from those who have experienced it. And what I'm about to summarize, ladies and gentlemen, is they came out with a lot. And for the purpose of this session, 30 minutes long, I've chosen what I believe to be the 7 most important. Now, everybody has choices in this world, and I'm very conscious of not being seen as just putting across one view, one opinion here. This is an opinion. These are views and opinions and sound advice from people with thousands of combined years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry. So I'm going to go through each one of these, ladies and gentlemen. These were the 7 that really resonated with me. And I'm going to share each one of these with you. Starting off with advice from these senior stalwarts within industry, starting off with number 1, which is never forget the big picture. And I said to these guys, well, what do you mean, the big picture? The response was, well, this one, firstly, Martin, you won't find any cemetery anywhere in the world with this engraved on the tombstones. I wish I'd spent more time at the work, more time in the office. A few people that I spoke to had bitter regrets that they had sacrificed so much for their profession because of commitment, because of their passion, and had actually let other important parts of their life just pass them by. And this is for me, I travel a lot like many of you, and for me this is a very, very important message that, never forget that we're all on this planet for a very, very limited period of time, and to make the most of that time and to achieve the balance. And that's really what this session is all about. In achieving that balance and in or maintaining that sense of purpose, what was really important in all of the people that I spoke to, I said, well, what do you mean by big picture? Well, Martin, it's about context. To be motivated, you've got to have a reason for caring. And in all of the people that I spoke to, or spoke with, they were really, really focused on one thing and one thing only, and that was the patient. Even though they'd been in the industry for 45 years, 40 years, 37 years, 38 years, they still had at the forefront of their mind the patient. The patients trust us. We have a duty of care to provide high-quality medicines that are affordable, which means we reduce waste, we reduce complexity, we make things as easy as possible and available, because what we do matters. It's interesting, NSF get involved in a lot of remediation, a lot of work when regulators come in and criticize, leave them with a warning letter, a consent decree, Section 483, whatever that regulatory action is. I would say one common theme in many companies I've worked with under remediation is that they have forgotten the big picture. They have forgotten the patient. They have forgotten that actually they're there to do a job other than create wealth and other than create, just money for the bank account. And in all of these people that I went to, all of which did manage to maintain this balance, their focus was always put the patient first, always have the patient first and foremost in your decision-making process. And don't sweat the small stuff. Don't worry about things you can't influence. Just worry about what impacts upon the patient. And interestingly, each one of the people that I went to broke rules. Interestingly, in a compliance-driven industry, these were all individuals who would always challenge the status quo, never stop challenging, never stop asking why, because it's only those people who do that actually make progress. Because in this world changing at warp speed, maintaining the status quo is no longer good enough. So, number one from these experts was really about keep the big picture. Don't drown in the small stuff. Really keep focused on what matters and what matters most. Number two, one that is very close to my heart. In the group that I interviewed, the group that I had discussions with, all had self-development at the top of their agenda. All, even though they were late in their career, all of them were still investing heavily in improving, developing their core skills, learning new ones, but in particular a focus on core skills and perfecting these to expert PhD level. And the quote there, every expert is a student first, is really, really key. And one common theme when I look at the group that I interviewed and the group that I had these discussions with, these people were all experts, but in only very, very select areas. So they invested heavily in understanding the product life cycle from start to finish, not just focusing on manufacturing, not just focusing on QA, but actually focusing on the entire product life cycle so that they understood what happened where and the role that they played. They were all experts in their manufacturing processes. They all understood their products. They all understood their critical control points. They all understood how the drug, how the medicines were absorbed and distributed and metabolized and excreted. They all understood the adverse effects. They all understood the basics of how their medicines were manufactured. They also excelled, each one of them, at risk-based decision-making. Each one of them had a maturity in the world of finance. It's worth pausing there for a second because Many of you I know are very scientific, very technical, but the reality is that the further you go up the career ladder, the further you get, the more closer you get to positions of real responsibility, this one in particular becomes more and more important. Your ability to have a good understanding of the financial systems that drive decisions, a good understanding of the profit and loss, so that you can become engaged in those conversations, be more influential in those conversations, and as a result make the right decisions. Each one of them also said, at the end of the day, your ability, you cannot be a leader without followers, and people follow only when there is respect, and that respect comes from really understanding how behavior happens, what influences behavior. So a good understanding of influencing behavior change is really, really key, as indeed is problem solving and the ability to solve problems as those problems arrive. Now, none of those will be new to you, I know, but what is different with this group of people is that they study these, they perfect these to PhD level, and they never accept they've achieved the standard they want to. So this is really about investment in yourself to provide the skills and knowledge that enable good decisions to be made and the balance that we're here to talk about happen. Now, changing behavior is not easy. It's challenging. It's far less challenging if you know how. Some of you have attended our in-house courses on changing GMP behaviors. They've been so successful that we're actually running an external course on the 29th of June next year. So if you're really interested in how to change behaviors, your own behavior as well as behaviors of others, if you're interested in changing habits, again, your own habits and the habits of others, I'd highly recommend this course. And if you want more information, there's a web link there that will take you directly to content. But if you would like to talk it through more, then please just give me a call and I'll talk you through what we cover and how we cover it. I would emphasize it's probably best to be quick because the course is already filling up very, very quickly. But this is there to help you. This is there to provide the knowledge and information to influence and change behaviors. In terms of perfecting the skills, those core skills, and that's the key thing to emphasize, is to really focus on what matters most. And in the view of those that I interviewed, those were the areas that mattered most. In terms of how you learn those key skills, it's not just book learning, it's volunteering. It's when you see an opportunity to take yourself outside your comfort zone, where one of those skills would be exposed, practiced and perfected, take that opportunity. Whenever projects arise, volunteer, take those opportunities. Interestingly, each one of the people that I interviewed said, you know what, Martin, I rarely get asked to be a mentor. I've got 40 years, 37 years. I've got a lot of years experience in the pharmaceutical industry. I'm about to retire in 2 or 3 years' time, and I would love to pass that information on, but nobody asks me. And interestingly, if you look around your organization and look around your network, you will have waiting for you some really, really good, really, really useful mentors. What I'd recommend you do is, think about the skills that you want to perfect. Look around your organization to see those that exemplify, demonstrate in practice those skills being used, and ask them, would you mentor me? Now, any of you want mentorship from me, just drop me an email and I'll do that for you. I see part of my role, indeed all of my colleagues see it the same way. Our role is to help share our experiences with you so that you don't make the same mistakes that we've made. So, if you want mentorship from me, all you have to do is ask. Importantly, number 4, this is really, really key, and a number of you have really if you listen to me say this before, forensically analyze your failures. The best learning opportunities come from failure. The thing is to understand that so that you can, instead of becoming emotional about that failure and just trying to sweep it under the carpet and forget it, actually analyze it. Talk to people. Well, what could I have done differently? How would that have had an impact? So the ability to forensically analyze failures is really, for me, one of the biggest learning points, learning exercises. And interesting, now this is my quote, by the way, the fifth one: don't reinvent the wheel, the answers are on Amazon. What I'm really saying is that, the answers are out there, and if you invest in finding them, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Now, when I was doing this, preparing for this a couple of weeks ago, I was in my study at home, and I just took a turn around and thought, okay, I'll take a picture. Now, the picture on the left-hand side is the reading, the research I'm doing at the moment. The picture on the right-hand side is the reading and the research that I've done. Now, for me, and I know many of you know me well, you know that I've always been an avid researcher, an avid reader. I see that as my role in helping the industry to save people having to do all this work. I do it for them, share those ideas, for example, in this webinar. So, you see on the left-hand side, and this was not staged, I hasten to add, this is just turning around and taking a picture, and you can see, what is on my reading list at the moment, How to Simplify. There's quite a few books on there. There's 4 or 5 really useful references on the world, what is coming, future challenges, because part of our role in NSF is actually preparing our clients, our friends for the future, not the past. So you can see quite a few books on not just simplification, but industry, futures, challenges, the inevitable, what is coming. And there's a lot of books there on risk management, because that's going to be a core skill you've got to excel at. So you can just get a sense of, that's my reading list at the moment. That's what I'm working through. And on the right is what I have worked through. So for me, the answers are on Amazon. It's recognizing that, investing in it. And if you are an avid reader like I am, I never read a book. This drives my wife nuts, sat in bed at night reading, and all she can hear is the scraping of the pencil on the paper, because whenever I read any one of these books, I always highlight, I always, underline what I consider to be really, really key points of text. I do this so that when I return back to them, whether it be weeks, months, sometimes years later, I don't have to go back through the book again. I just go through and I just read and focus very much on the highlights. So the answers are on Amazon. It does take effort, but if you're serious about refining those skills that will allow you to achieve the balance that we've been talking about, this is really when as we say, the pedal hits the metal. This is where you've really got to put the effort in if you want to get the reward. And that means putting the effort in to reading and the research. Now, as time pressured as you are, 30 minutes a day adds up to a significant amount by the end of the year. The answers are out there. They're on Amazon. You just got to find them. Number 3, this is a really, really key one. In all of the people that I spoke with, they all emphasized the incredible value of their network and relationships. These were all avid networkers, not networkers in a cynical, political sense, and I think we've all come across those in our career at some stage. But these were all people who networked with a real purpose. It was part of their schedule, part of their day, but their focus was recognizing the power of reciprocity. And what that really says is, if you give something to somebody without even being asked, you actively go out of your way to help others, you will get that back in time. So when you provide information to people, when you help somebody unsolicited, that changes the dynamic of a relationship. And that immediately encourages that person to help you at some stage. Now, the key thing here is you've got to genuinely mean that. You've got to genuinely, help people for the right reason rather than expecting to get something back. In other words, don't ever fake it. Don't ever, and we've all come across networkers in our careers who only have one priority, and that is themselves. A good networker, their priority is to help others first and foremost. The whole purpose of our journal, the whole purpose of these free webinars is not to expect anything back from anybody. It's really to say, look, the industry needs our skills, needs our expertise. We're here to help, and here is that help free. So reciprocity is really, really important, but it must be genuine. So think about your networks, because you have people in your organizations, professionally, socially, who have information and skills that will benefit you. And with LinkedIn and all of the social networking sites available, networking is becoming more and more important, and yet so many people are siloed in their thinking, solving problems in isolation, struggling with issues in isolation, when actually the network they have, within that network there are people who can help, people that can help solve problems. And to open that door, just offer something free, just help people. And in my experience, that help comes back, providing it is genuine. So networking is really, really key, and if you want that balance, develop a really, really good network. Number 4, one that is close to my heart, is really taking a positive attitude to failures. None of us are perfect. We make mistakes. Things that we want to happen sometimes don't. We don't get the expected result. And we need to learn from that. And there's a famous, lovely quote from Henry Ford: failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. So in this world that is changing rapidly, more failures will happen. In other words, more learning opportunities will present themselves, providing you see them as such. Number 5, another one that's really close to my heart: look after yourself. I go into so many meetings, and I know I tend to see I have a biased audience in the sense that these are companies often under remediation, often under a huge amount of pressure, and what I see is fatigued people, stressed minds, and people that often are unable to perform. We all have remarkable bodies, we all have remarkable minds, and we all make personal choices how we look after both. Personal choices in terms of diet and exercise and sleep and relaxation. And we're not machines. And if we want that balance, if we want to perform well in the workplace, to have a home life that is equally rewarding, we've got to look after that which allows us to do that. Now, everyone has personal choices. On the surface of it, I lead quite an unhealthy lifestyle in terms of 80% traveling, strange hotels, airline food, the sort of thing. And the focus for me, many of you know, I like to keep fit. Every year I enter an Ironman triathlon. Now, for those of you that don't know what an Ironman triathlon is, you swim 2.5 miles, you cycle 115, and just to cap off the end of a strenuous day, you run a marathon. Now, every year my wife says to me, why on earth do you put yourself through this? I might be smiling here, but trust me, 5 minutes before the race finished, I was not smiling. These are tough events. They are expensive events. And the reason I do this is because it forces me to take time out from my schedule. It forces me, when I wouldn't normally get out of bed at 5 in the morning to go for a run or to go for a swim or to go for a bike ride. I know I have an event that I've paid a lot of money for, and it forces that level of balance. For me, that works. So think about something that forces you to look after yourself, because if you don't, work always fills that vacuum. By the way, I'm really terrible at triathlon, but I turn up, I finish, and it achieves the objective. Power of focus. Interestingly, in all of the people that I spoke with, they were incredibly focused. There are two finite resources we have, time and energy, and we each have a responsibility to use these intelligently. And that means not getting caught up in what I call the thick or thin things. In other words, things that don't matter. Because that one of those finite resources, energy, follows focus. The more you focus on, the more the energy follows. We all know that multitasking doesn't work, and the best in class always have this ability to focus and use their finite resources of time and energy intelligently. Now, the best model I've ever come across, ladies and gentlemen, for this, I'd really recommend, if you want to read a management book, go out and get Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He covers how highly effective people use their time effectively, and they spend all of their time, 80% of their time, in Quadrant 2, preparing, planning, value-adding, clarification, exercises, relationship building, true recreation, relaxation. They don't waste time in Quadrants 3 and Quadrants 4, and interestingly, I would say a vast majority of people I meet in industry spend virtually all of their time in the quadrant of deception and the quadrant of waste. So look at that grid, think about the activities you do on a daily basis and your schedule, and be honest with yourself, where do they go? Because if you spend too much time in Quadrant 1, which is the quadrant of necessity, you will crash and burn. If you spend all of your time in Quadrants 3 and 4, equally so. So the focus has to be organizing our schedule around Quadrant 2, and that is where really effective people spend 80% of their time. Really effective organizations spend 80% of their time there. So think carefully about it and make sure your Quadrant 2 activities go in your schedule first. Practice saying no. And I really do, I mean this to anybody, I emphasize this to anybody I mentor, which is your success depends on what you stop doing. To get into Quadrant 2, you've got to say no to activities in Quadrant 3 and Quadrant 4. That's no, not maybe, could do it tomorrow. It's no, I'm not going to do it. And that takes discipline, but that discipline pays off. Number 7, lastly, decision making. I'm not going to emphasize this too much, ladies and gentlemen. We covered this in the last webinar, so just refer back to this. I'm actually running a training session with a European regulatory agency this Wednesday. It is going to be on risk-based decision making. I'm taking 140 of their inspectors through a session on decision making, where I'm really going to be emphasizing, look, to make good decisions, you have to be structured, you have to be disciplined, you have to manage your chimp, which is your inbuilt process for making decisions, and you have to refine and improve your logical decision-making processes. That was covered in the last webinar. I'm not going to go through it again, but I would encourage you to go back to that last webinar that I did around chimp management, because we become a product of the decisions that we make. And if we allow the chimp, which is our conditioned fight, flight, freeze response to decisions to dominate, we will crash and burn. So we need to practice and refine and habituate a more factual-based, less emotional response to decisions, and that balance that we all look for can be achieved. So just go back to that webinar, ladies and gentlemen, and you'll find more guidance. So what I've done is to take the 35, 40 bits of advice from all of these industry stalwarts, these experienced people, each of 37 to 40 years experience, condensed it down into the law of the vital few for your survival kit. Keep the big picture, that is patient-focused. Focus on yourself, number 2, self-development. But focus very much on the core skills that you must refine to PhD level. Because if you don't invest in yourself, nobody else will. Create, maintain, and grow a strong and loyal network. Because relationships really, really matter, but they need to be nurtured, but with positive intent. Number 4, remember, when stuff goes wrong, that's good, providing you learn from it. Look after yourself. We all have unique bodies, unique minds that can do incredible things. We just need to look after them. And that's a personal choice. As indeed is where we spend our time and energy, resources that are finite. And number 7, don't forget to manage that chimp we all have. We're here to help. There's a web link there, ladies and gentlemen, that takes you through to all of the articles, all of the white papers, all of the YouTube clips, all of the webinars. You just got to invest the time to listen to those. We hope they're useful. They're designed to be so. So that's it for this short, sharp session. I've overrun a few minutes. Apologies for that. October, we're going to talk about blame culture, causes and prevention. Because if you have a blame culture, you are doomed. So this session is about how to prevent blame from occurring in the workplace. Because when you have blame, you have no progress. When you have blame, you don't have an environment that anybody wants to work in or be creative within. So October is going to focus on blame culture, its causes, and importantly, its prevention. And please, if you have any questions, please drop me an email. If you want mentorship, I really do mean what I said. That invitation is there for any of you. And please keep in touch via telephone, email, or follow me on LinkedIn. So once again, thank you for listening, and thank you for support. And speak with you once again in October, later, if not before. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please stand by.